Welcome to Wise Wednesday, the podcast that goes beyond the highlight reel to uncover the real stories, the setbacks, the pivots, the long nights, and the moments that make it all worth it. Hosted by Jake Britton, each episode features honest conversations with creative professionals, entrepreneurs, and out-of-the-box thinkers. Together, they explore not just what these guests do, but how they got there, what they've learned along the way, and the hard-earned wisdom that shapes their journey.
Hello. Welcome back to Wise Wednesday, the podcast where we go beyond the highlight reel and talk about the real stuff, the struggles, the pivots, the late nights, the moments that make it all worth it. I, of course, am your host, Jake Britton. Each week, we've been able to sit down with different creative professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs, out-of-box thinkers, all to unpack not just what they do, but really how they got there and what they've learned along the way, the wisdom they've picked up. Today's guest has a special way with words. He's a dear friend. Jeff Dutton is a copywriter, book publisher, brand strategist here at Wise Bear, the voice behind countless business identities that don't just sound good, but actually are built to connect. He helps brands find their verbal edge, clarify their messaging, and write like they mean it. Jeff, welcome aboard.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me. First of all, I got to, compliment that painting behind you there. That thing is pretty sweet.
Oh, hey, I appreciate it. This was a thrift store find, right? Actually it was a, not quite thrift store, like a vintage secondhand store out in Muskegon, but they got like a whole row of them. This one caught my eye and I haggled with the guy. He wanted like a couple $100 for it. I said, listen, man, I'm a cowboy at heart. I need this painting. I got 50.
Nice.
That was a good snag and get lots of compliments on it, and that one of the things we're going to talk about, right, is like that verbal identity, the personal branding and some of those conversations that will come about. And, like this to me is just part of my personal branding and making sure that it's in the background, I think just sparks good conversation, right?
Yep. Nice. Agreed.
Well, hey, we want to talk about your journey, right? And we want to get into some marketing tips and some wisdom. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself. Take us back. How did this journey of like, and maybe the gift of language and words and tying it into branding, when did you realize you had that? And when did this all start?
Oh, man. So, life's been a winding journey for sure, from one time wanting to be a lawyer and a politician to surfing some couches and then landing in environmental science as, sitting at a desk writing technical reports. Probably credit goes to my mother. She writes letters to this day to everybody, about how much she loves a product, catches up with old friends, her parents' friends. And I've noticed over the years, I just kind of naturally picked up that talent. I got children right now who seem to be doing the same, which is cool. And I've just always had a love for written language. I used to read a book a night when I was bored, brush right through it, pick up what others were doing. And just I'm expressing myself, especially very opinionated as a young person. I used to write for my college paper. I was the opinions section editor. So, I had a lot of opinions on all kinds of stuff, when iPads were coming out to what politics were. So that was really where I started to hone my voice. And then from there, it's just, people came to me with projects, ideas, or needed help even. I've got colleagues in the professional world that will still hit me up and be like, hey, how should I word this email? It's just kind of a natural thing that I enjoy doing.
That's awesome. And I think you definitely, like I said, you have a knack for words, and you've helped with countless projects here at Wise Bear, really partnered up with us to help define some of those verbal identities and then transform them into the brand itself. When do you feel like that creative journey evolved from, messing around writing words to actually starting a book publishing company, helping me define brand voices?
Sure. I mean, I've always had this entrepreneurial drive and desire to work for myself, and I've always been bootstrapping. So, starting out with an idea I had for an app to sell farmers' vegetables to grocery stores direct that never got off the ground. You had to write all the copy for that. I always encourage anyone I know too, yourself included, start your own business. If you're doing this, I'm like, go for it. And then kind of just talk through like what you got to do. And then, if I need to help step in, just give them some verbiage to talk to their clients, their customers, their messaging. And it really took off probably, 10-ish years ago when I just wanted to write for myself. Actually, going back to college, I had an internship writing. My first technical job I received in environmental science, I got hired because I could write. The guy's like, I see you write for this paper and you did this internship. Can you write? You're hired. I'm like, sweet. So it kind of goes back to college, but really kind of coalesced in the past 10 years through entrepreneurial drive. I would say.
Entrepreneurial drive, right? You either have it or you don't. Sometimes you just get that itch and you got to scratch it. And yeah, for sure. For those of you who don't know, Jeff and I have collaborated a lot. He's somebody I talk to weekly, if not a couple times a week, always bouncing ideas off. And he's definitely like a mentor and motivator for me, to continue to stay on my course and building Wise Bear and trying to build something meaningful. And yeah, I guess I did just call you a mentor. I didn't mean to age you there, Jeff. But
Yeah.
I think everybody has just somebody in their life that helps shape the way you approach business life. Are there any mentors or authors even, or just people that help shape the way you approach storytelling?
As far as I approach storytelling, again, initial credit to my mother. Authors, there's so many, I could not list them. I read nonstop, be it articles, books, papers, nowadays driving too, obviously it's not reading, but books on tape. So it's just been a massive influence of a lifetime of reading and loving the written language for sure. I couldn't really give one person credit other than, again, picking that up from my mom at an early age.
Well, kudos, Mom. Yeah, and it's funny. I was not a reader. Growing up, that was something, a struggle. Like I had to sit down and really focus on reading and reading comprehension. I'd read something and go in one ear, out the other. I was very visual learner. Don't think that surprises anybody. But over the last, especially a handful of years, I've really become to enjoy reading, and honestly, really started to understand the power of them. We do a lot of SEO at Wise Bear, and we talk often about this no fluff approach, right? Because there's so many websites that get built and the priority is visual, which of course it's great, but what in terms of SEO, what do people really want to see? And they want to see authority driven content, facts. They want to see educational stuff, and Google especially really doesn't want to see fluff, a bunch of placeholders. They really want it to be informative and educational for their end users or the people using their search engines. And I think in addition to just the SEO piece, one of the things that we do is we do these brand development projects, and we'll say, okay, hey, yeah, we can build you a website, but what is your visual brand identity? And they're like, oh, well, here's a logo. Like, well, no, what are you really all about? What are your colors? What is your look? What is your vibe? And they're like, well, it's kind of this. I'm like, well, let's define your mission statement. Let's define your mantra. Who are you? What is your verbal identity? And once we have that in, we can kind of define the visual identity, and then take that verbal identity and visual identity and build a more impactful website. You and I have worked with countless founders, small businesses. How do you feel like those experiences have shaped your view on really, I guess, what a brand voice is?
Sure. I guess the foundation of it is a genuine interest and care in people and what they're doing. And then, the brand voice is trying to pull out of someone's mind eye what they envision with their goal, their mission. What's the place look like? How do we treat our employees? How do we interact with our customers? At the end of the day, in a business owner's mind, what do they go to sleep with that smile on their face thinking that's the life I'm going to live. That's the goal I'm driving for. And you take that and you put that in written language and, and get it to conveys to the world. You tell that story in a way that's easy to understand, compelling, tugs at the emotions, and shares what's coming out of the heart of the individual who's pouring their heart and soul into a business, entity or endeavor, that is. So,
and you're right. Everybody, anybody who has started their own business or is starting their own business, dumps a lot into it, right? It is most of the time a passion project, especially, the small business startups. What mistakes do you see businesses make when they're trying to develop that brand, that verbal identity? I see a lot of people with they kind of try too hard. But what other, kind of mistakes do you see people doing out there?
Trying to sell and not tell is probably the best way I could put it. Using the buzzwords they see, trying to get the calls to action that they think are going to be hot in today's trends, instead of being authentic and genuinely sharing with people what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you intend to do it. People, I think, especially in a world now of increasing AI and everything's online, they value authenticity. They want to connect with human beings. You're a person with a story, a journey, struggles, ups, downs, all arounds, and you're putting yourself out there and pouring yourself into something you believe in. Tell folks about it. Don't sit there and try and sell them a widget or a service and use the word robust 17,000 times. Just tell a genuine, unique story. So I see the mistake is not doing that. So
authenticity, storytelling, right? It all can be easily spotted when you're being authentic. Consumers are smarter than ever, and I think like there's a difference between a voice that just like even sounds cool or maybe looks good, on a first read, but one that truly connects. What do you think that difference really is?
I think that difference is the genuine story you're telling. Again, I think people have a pretty good BS meter. As you noted, consumers are savvier than ever. And if I'm reading something and it's trying to hit me with the latest trend or fad or, again, overused business word you hear 1,000 times, I'm going to smell it out right away. If I'm reading through, I get newsletters from some content creators out there and they're sharing their own personal experience, talking about their struggles, talking about their triumphs, and just sitting there like they're sitting next to a couch on me, telling me about what they're doing. That's something I resonate with. I don't need to be sold a used car. I need to, find out who you are and see why I want to engage with you.
So if there's a business owner out there, listening, right, and they're kind of like, how do I uncover my brand voice? I'm not a word guy, they're saying, I don't really understand what we're even talking about. What would you say step one is for somebody listening that you want to help them uncover their authentic brand voice?
Yeah, ask yourself a bunch of introspective, open-ended questions. Who am I? How did I get here? Why did I do this? Why do I continue to do this? What's my goals for improvement? What do I want to share with community? Just dig into who you are and what you're doing and start writing down, journal on that a little bit and see what comes from there. And then, if you need to work with somebody who's more adept at wordsmithing it, at least you have some great foundational content to get off the ground just by asking yourself those questions about yourself and being introspective. That'd be my advice.
Yeah, I like that. Are there other exercises or, prompts that potentially could help somebody out there define their brand voice? What are some things that we do when we're onboarding a potential new client?
Sure. Other than, again, asking a lot of those own questions, don't try and force it. If you're doing this on your own, this is not what we do with clients, maybe unplug for a bit, go for a walk and think about, all those questions I had mentioned, and then think about how you would sit down and tell your story in an excited way. If you're out there putting the effort in to start a business and take the risks, you're excited, you've got drive, you've got energy. So, get a grounding in who you are and what you're doing. And then, with the passion you have that you're putting into building this business, share it with the world. And I think when we work with people, we uncover those questions of who you are, what do you want to do, what do you envision this being, and also what's your drive? Tell it to us like, we're here to partner with you. How excited are you? And then we try and capture that excitement, convey that drive, that passion, and build a story around who they are and tell it in a passionate, compelling way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I see, is people we'll work with them, we'll get their verbal identity, we'll build out a visual, we'll build out a website, and we launch the website, and then it kind of falls apart, right? Because it's hard, I think. Sometimes I think it's easier to like get everything fine-tuned. It's almost harder to stay consistent, right? Like once you're fine-tuned, you have this kind of voice, this verbal identity, you have the visuals, you have the new website, right? How can a team stay consistent with their brand messaging across all the platforms that are available today?
Sure. I think, one of the things we do with clients is we help them develop that mission statement, as you said, and like your key guiding principles. And I think when you're developing your voice, before you just jump into writing out about this service, that service, who you are, history, what have you, you really need to sit down and answer the questions of who we are, what's our mission statement, what are the 7-8 key guiding principles that guide our business and what we do. So having that to start is key, and then having that to go back to, because you really should, kind of ground truth what you're doing against your guiding principles, who you are, and your mission statement. And that'll keep you, I think, consistent and in check so that you're not wandering off of, your original purpose, the passion for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really good too. I think about like how these verbal identities can be used in the real world, right? And like I'm putting myself kind of back in like the sales shoes. So I'm like, okay, you got this mission statement, you got this kind of way that we speak about ourselves or our services and present our services. You're a sales guy, right? How do you see the power of like a consistent verbal brand identity being used in a real world situation? For example, a professional landscaper who is maybe doing a commercial job and presenting, why this company should choose them over another.
Yeah. So to answer the question, even with like a landscaper, you want a consistent verbal message because it makes you recognizable. It resonates, to get to some of the great jingles and logos of history. When I think of this scenario, this thought pops in my head. Or when I'm looking outside and I'm like, crap, I got to cut my grass for the 4th time in 3 weeks because of all this rain. And then you think of like, oh, I remember that dude who's telling his story about he's got grass taken care of so you could do the things you want to enjoy in life. If you have a resonating story that sticks with people when events in their life come up that, coincide with what you're offering, i.e. the grass cutting, it's going to be top of mind for the consumer out there to like, oh, let me reach out to them. I heard that story. That was pretty compelling. I do want to go hang with my kids and not spend 4 hours cutting grass. I'm going to call John,
Yeah, because again, storytelling sells, authenticity sells, and it's more memorable than the fluff and the buzzwords and just another business, right? And if you can convey that on your website, you can convey that on your different digital platforms, but also just verbalize it with your team, right? Like this is a tool that needs to be owned by the owner, the founder of the business, but also trained to the team and other people that represent you out in the real world, right? Because it's important to just stay consistent across not just the digital platforms, but also just any platform.
Day-to-day interactions. Yeah.
Any interaction. Yeah. And I think about like some things that you and I have talked about, right? And we talked about one time just kind of like how we talk to certain people, right? Like you're going to talk to somebody, maybe on your day job, slightly different than you're going to talk to your wife or like your kids or your mother.
Oh, yeah.
There's this verbal identity that's or like this verbal, personality around the way you speak. And, that's something that we do subconsciously, every day, just in our interactions. You care to expand on that at all?
Yeah. And to your point, we do subconsciously, I talk to my mother different than my childhood best friend. In my house, we make fun of my wife when she's talking to her sister. We know it. And they know when I'm talking to certain friends as well, the kids and my wife. But, and as you noted, it's subconscious. You kind of just pick up on based on the relationship. But the same goes for the listener and I would say your audience. They subconsciously pick up on your verbal brand. Like, oh, this guy's an authority on cutting grass. This individual really knows how to, host events. And I could tell by the way they're talking. And that matters. You could tell when I'm speaking to somebody who's my boss respectfully compared to shooting the breeze with a buddy. And it's subconscious in the way it comes out. I mean, it's structured some by relationships and, proper manners, what have you, but it's also subconsciously received by the listener. Like, oh, he's showing me respect. Oh, we're on cool terms. We can speak freely here. That comes out. So being conscious of that, understanding that branding is more than just sitting around, with some marketing folks, like making up a way to show yourself to the world. Branding is who you are and how you act in certain situations. So as a business owner conveying to the market, you're going to show a certain face, a certain way, your values, your goals to the market than you are, home at night with your wife as a business owner. And branding is really flushing that out, that it's authentic, like we mentioned, and keeping it consistent and having that presence in the market as an authentic, consistent individual telling your story. And that's kind of where natural branding evolves. And actually there's kind of that line, that gradient, if you will, to professional branding.
Yeah. Branding is crucial, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just, and you just don't realize how important it is until you've really built out those identities and really gone through some of the, the prompts to kind of pull it out of you, right?
Yeah. And it's not even building, it's identifying and refining, I would say, is really what it is. Just kind of understanding who you are and stepping into that,
Yeah, absolutely. And that could be a quote, understand who you are and step into it. I like that as a segue, right? And we're breaking records over here. I've done about 10 or so of these, Jeff, and we're getting right through it. And I think we're getting to the good stuff. And this is about wisdom. This is about entrepreneur. This is about marketing, but it's also about, just kind of the struggles along the way. As you've learned and kind of refined your own practices and life and business, what are some of those struggles that you've faced and maybe overcome? And, what are some things that you've learned, from some of those struggles?
Sure. I mean, the biggest struggles, I think this is not just in business, but a lot of people could resonate with this, is doubt and fear. Can I do this? I can't give up a paycheck. I don't have time. I'm going to be too stressed out. There's 1,000 voices out there. Why does anyone want to hear my writing? So to overcome those, it's always a work in progress. It's not like, I'm some multimillionaire successful entrepreneur. I've yet to arrive, but that's not necessarily the goal. My goal is to, be authentic and work on what I'm passionate about, and also give the same passion to my employer. I have a day job. And actually, I appreciate my employer and I like what I do right now, which is, a good thing. But the struggles are just to, one, like I said earlier, know who I am, not try to be something I'm not try to present a fake face or do something to get ahead that's not genuinely me. And two, being comfortable with who I am and not being afraid of it and not having doubt that, the world wants to hear what I have to say and engage with me. I want to get out there and talk to people, not because I'm necessarily trying to sell something over or ultimately just get a bunch of money. I want to get out there and engage with people because I love people. I love life. I want to suck the marrow out of this thing. And to do that, you've got to be able to get over fear and doubt, which, can be crippling. And that's been a biggest struggle for me on and off, and will continue to be, I'm sure, in this crazy life.
And I think that, that fear and doubt is with, it's in everyone, I don't think anyone out there to say that they've never been afraid, especially when they're in, kind of a foreign territory or, a new territory in life or business. I don't think there's anyone out there that can say they truly weren't, like, at least to have some fear behind some of these decisions. What advice would you give to someone who's afraid to go for it, but also maybe just afraid to put their words out there, their voice out there, to do it authentically?
It's pretty simple. Just one step at a time and do it. I had a friend that wrote a good book once, and I'm like, we should publish this. So I started a publishing company. I've done a few entrepreneurial things that have fallen flat in their face, maybe broke even. Like, just go for it. I wanted a community garden in a town once. We started one. I wanted to own chickens in the Chicago suburb. I worked to change the law so I could do that. And I'm not anything special in regards of changing laws or starting businesses, but if you got an idea, act on it. You might fail. Great. You'll learn, just go for it.
Yeah. And I do want to touch on your publishing company and kind of, some of the projects that we've been working on lately around that, because I think it's a great, I think one of the things that I've realized is everybody has a story to tell. And, there's books that get published that probably should never have seen the light of day. And there's stories within people's lives that never see a book. What is your publishing company? What are you guys all about? What's your mission? And what are you up to now with it?
Sure. Yeah. Appreciate you asking. It's a project of passion that's starting to get more serious, launching the website, hoping to do some marketing around it. But really, it's just a desire. My love of people and their stories, it kind of helps me as a salesperson. Like, I genuinely, when I meet someone, I want to know, like, oh yeah, where'd you come from? How'd you get here? Why do you do this? Everything about someone, I appreciate their story. And I just wanted to help folks tell their story. Started off, for authors around Lake Michigan. It's what Big Water Press is the name of it. Then I moved on down south to the Lake of the Ozarks. And now it's really just looking to bring about the untold stories that normally wouldn't get the light of day. There's so many good ideas out there, from children's books to coffee table books about small nurseries in Wisconsin to career self-help, pulp fiction, stories and cowboy poetry that I've been lucky to engage with. And I enjoy, helping people bring their story to the world. So that's kind of what that's about there. It's just really the mission, if you will, is to help folks bring their story to the world and share that.
I forgot about that cowboy poetry book. I actually bought one of those.
There you go. Thank you.
I can't remember the name right now. What was the name?
Park Song.
Yes.
Yeah.
It shows I probably didn't read it. I told you I wasn't a good reader, though.
No, I ain't holding it against you. But yeah, you should sit there by that nice painting behind you. Throw that cowboy hat you have on.
It's fitting. It's all part of the brand, baby. Fake cowboy. So, well, Jeff, thank you so much, for being on and for taking the time. We have a little bit of a cheesy signature closer here, and
nice.
It's always a loaded question, right? But we've really been able to get some great responses and good insights. So, if you had to boil everything you've learned, professionally, personally, and creatively, into one core truth at this point in your life, what would that truth be?
Be yourself and enjoy it.
Boom. From Jeff Dutton himself. All right. There you go. All right. Well, I hope you can enjoy it this week. And I'm looking forward to our next project together. and looking forward to working more with Big Water Press. And I'll definitely be keeping my eyes and ears peeled for some more marketing around that exciting adventure. So
Appreciate that.
any other second thoughts?
No, I'm just happy to be here. To the folks out there, like I said, get to know who you are and why you're doing it, and tell people. People want to know. People care. Human connection is, I think, what a lot of people are looking for in our modern age. And get out there, don't be afraid, have no doubt, and have fun doing it. So thanks for having me, Jake.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Jeff. And to the listeners, tune in again next week for another episode of Wise Wednesday. We'll talk to you guys later.